Now, over to you, Micah.
Thank you very much, Sumesh, and thank you to some of our warmed up discussion. Lisa, I was particularly excited about hearing about wreaking havoc and becoming a disruptor internally, and I'm certainly going to be asking for a few provocations and keeping the energy levels nice and high. So welcome to our topic today, which is marketing and entrepreneurship trends beyond 2022. Wow, where do we start? I mean, when I was researching and reflecting on future trends around our two disciplines, it was so easy to find predictions and find forecasts and find a lot of, I guess, keyboard warriors and experts on these topics and, what the future of our disciplines are going to be. The challenge, as I saw it, was to see the clarity among the commotion and the market opportunities for innovation and how do entrepreneurs and innovative strategies for marketing pan out in an undefined future. We've seen how that's gone in the last 2 years, and I think we would have all liked to have known that a pandemic would be a trend. We know that there were people predicting it, and we didn't really listen to them as well. So we may become those people that get listened to in the future. So something we can predict with a little bit more certainty is that our critical thinking skills and our experience with intuitive decision making for the entrepreneurs among the group, they are certainly going to increase our odds of predicting the future and of meeting the market where it needs to be. The good news for us is that we have our postgraduate studies and industry experience to guide us as we forge ahead in our industries. And so thus, we can't turn the future into a certainty, but we can become futurists. And today, we can have a healthy debate about what we need to look for and what's coming up ahead. Now, personally, Michael Walker's my name. I've recently founded a venture growth studio and moved back to Brisbane after several years in Dubai. That was my third stint living abroad. I've lived across North America, Singapore, and the Middle East. Been very fortunate to have a career across FMCG, retail, hospitality, franchising, executive coaching, and most recently, cyber security and technology. And it's not so much the combination of all of those skills, it's how we use them. So you'll hear a lot of action talk, you'll hear a lot of counterintuitive suggestions from me today, all with a view of bringing out the best insights and some really good content for us to write about in the special edition AIB number 9 coming up. Without any further ado, I'll introduce our panelists and I'll just ask them to do a quick sound check and let us know their role with the university, and we'll come back as a group for the first question. Sumesh, we'll start with you.
Well, definitely, yes. Micah, thank you for that. And my name is Sumesh, and as you know, I'm a senior lecturer and also the discipline lead for entrepreneurship and marketing area. I've joined AIB 5 years back. Before that, I was in the university sector. I worked in Monash University for a period of 8 years, and then Murdoch University for 3 years. And I worked actually in industry before joining academia for a while. And once I got my PhD, it was all actually academia that I worked, and teaching, research, academic administration has been actually life for the last, I would say 15 years. That's
great balance of the industry as well as the academia. Thank you very much for being with us today. Sam, do you want to go next? You're to my right-hand side, so let's go with you.
Yeah, just this is Samana Soleimani Sam, and I've been with AIB for 3 years. Main area is digital marketing, and also I've been in tourism. So it was astrotourism, the main focus of the projects, but yeah, glad to be here.
Pleasure to have you. And digital marketing certainly hot on everyone's trend list in the next 10 to 20 years, what with smart predictive technologies being a part of our current day and future. Diane, can we hear from you next?
Yes, hi. I am also with the marketing and entrepreneurship team. I've been there about 6 years, I think it is now, but I have a long association with AIB, having done my doctorate at AIB while I was working in industry for about 25, 30 odd years or whatever it was. So yeah, happy to be here today, and I look forward to this discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And rounding out, Tarek.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tarek Rasul. I'm one of the marketing academics and mainly teach 2 subjects, namely digital marketing and entrepreneurship. And I have been working at AIB for the last 10 years. And before starting my academic career, I worked in the industry for a few years when I was in Glasgow, Scotland, as a market researcher especially. And yeah, I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Excellent. You should mention Glasgow. I was there for COP26 last year. Very obscure and interesting place, beautiful, wonderful place, where the world converged to talk about climate action only less than a year ago. So really wonderful to hear from and introduce our panelists for today. Now on to some of the predicted trends that we're going to talk about. So we've itemized entrepreneurship and marketing down to both the business ideas and market opportunities that entrepreneurs will actually take hold of and do something with and meet the market challenge with the opportunity and product fit. But also there are some innovative futurist ways that marketing is going to be driven in the future. And then there's some ethical and sustainability considerations, even some legal considerations around that. And the idea with today is to provoke and inspire action and to have a really healthy debate. And so whether it's advancing Web3 technologies that drive innovation, and I know tech, there's a real bias towards tech, so we're going to start with tech today, whether it's around the influencer marketing, the micro stories, micro videos, and that type of thing, we're aiming to hit some of the high points to provoke even more thought and insights, obviously for the next edition of the AIB review as well. So without any further ado, let's talk tech. So technologies like AI, obviously we hear about them. I have completed an AI masterclass with one of the senior lecturers at AIB myself. About a year or 18 months ago during COVID, I said, well, hang on a sec, I can't work my typical 100 hours a week. I have no commute anymore. I'm all Zoomed and Teamsed out. What may I do with my 7 p.m? And I ended up joining a short course, a masterclass on AI, and I learned a lot. But the more I learned about AI and the metaverse and Web3 technologies, the more I realized, even as a technology CEO, I don't really know a lot. The more we learn, the more we realize we have to learn. So things like digital twins, secured cryptographic keys, biometric authentication. And we heard from Lisa, one of our members earlier, about agile and working smart and working efficiently. All of these things have to work in tandem. So I wanted to put it out there to our panelists first, and I'm going to ask some of the more tech interested and core panelists to answer this question. But what tech trends are we most excited about and why? And who would benefit and who will benefit? What will the stakeholder groups be that benefit from a proliferation of AI or Web3 or metaverse? And maybe conversely, who will not benefit from those things? So who is not prepared for those? And who would like to go first? I can see a couple of tech-minded panelists here. We should mention Sam's up very late in her home country as well. So let's keep the energy high for Sam as well.
Yeah, it just maybe I go with the thing that sometimes people confuse, let's say, metaverse with the technologies that enables it. So for example, 5G is the technology that is essential for metaverse, because we need to have great connectivity, we need to have low latency and all of that, let's say, around the world. So wherever we want to have that. So that's why we haven't yet taken off, because 5G itself as an essential tool and technology is not yet accessible to many areas and many places. So yeah, that's one of the things that, but with, Web3, just as a quick recap of that, we normally say we have mass media. We started with mass media that was offline, all of the things. Then we went to internet as online media, which they call it Web 1. Then we had another evolution of social media that happened, which we call it Web 2. And now that we are entering Web 3, it is, the evolution of media, which they call it individual media, that many people can interact with each other in basically virtual platforms.
Very interesting, and a great way to kick off with the fact that a future undefined is it's like going to a place we don't have a map for. And when people confuse the technology that enables a certain future with the actual environment itself, it's interesting. You should touch on Web 1, 2, and 3. I've heard it recently mentioned that, Web 1 was information sharing, Web 2 was value sharing, so around marketplaces and financial transactions. And this particular proponent was saying that, Web 3 is integrity sharing. So we're now in a space where we kind of know and accept that a lot of our data and information and privacy is out there. And so it'll be what levers around first party, second party, third party data, what levers can be pulled. These are all really interesting trends. Diane, I wanted to sort of ask you next, because I know you work with entrepreneurs and you deal with a lot of digital marketing trends, but what we may not also know is you're also avid follower of these entrepreneurship sort of digital trends and how your view might fold into this debate.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because, technology is, as you said, an enabler, right? And I personally believe it will be entrepreneurs who lead the way in identifying the problems and coming up with the solutions. For example, I've been recently working with an entrepreneur in a space around creating a subscription-based streaming platform for live performance, right? So that particular solution was an answer to a problem that consumers had in accessing live performance, be that because of geography, be that because of financial constraints, etc. And also the problem that artists have and producers have that need revenue streams. They need to monetize beyond the actual performance itself. So the technologies come together to form this live streaming platform that allows access for consumers any place, anytime, anywhere, but also a revenue stream for artists who are struggling. As we have all known, also the confluence of the pandemic then has only amplified the need for artists to find more revenue streams and for consumers to be able to access things. So when I see, a whole bunch of these types of things are happening, I mean, they're already happening, and we're going to see more and more and more of things that are enabled by technology. It's interesting you said something about VR and technology and the latency. For example, in that space, our experience in this particular entrepreneurship story is that the intention is to create immersive experience with VR as one of the options. However, when we went around the world, we had invitations to tech hubs around the world. What we realized is that the technology wasn't there yet to be able to do it. So that still needs to be created, and that shifted the business model and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think entrepreneurs are going to be right up there driving all of this.
Absolutely. And it appears that we all have a role to play in building some sort of patience or understanding that if the technologies are advancing us, but maybe that we didn't even know they were there a few minutes ago. I've just learned something today, Diane, about this fantastic live streaming media. I want to sign up, right? I all of a sudden want to be a consumer. I wonder how fast I would become a disgruntled customer if my Telstra speeds weren't, fast enough for me to see it on the mobile wherever I am in Australia. So we sort of are, setting our customers and our stakeholders up with all of these expectations. And, to Sam's point, we need to make sure that there's a correct definition of this. After the Haynes review into financial institutions recently, I was able to meet with one of the ministers for financial institutions. And she basically said innovation and even fintech innovation can't move unless there's an education beside it. Now, we know this in business leaders, there's an education top out. So flipping over to the entrepreneurs, what kind of entrepreneurs are we looking for to lead these, these trends? I mean, is like the way of working has changed, hybrid working has come in. Some companies are saying you can still work from anywhere. Our panelists were mentioning at the start of today that, face-to-face meetings are absolutely critical and vital to building relationships. So what blend or what mix of physical and digital interactions are going to occur is going to be determining the success of all of this as well. Does anyone like to comment on the future of entrepreneurs and marketeers working in this slow down, speed up world?
I'm happy to jump in on that one because
absolutely.
It is absolutely going to be online. I mean, marketers and entrepreneurs are going to be working online. And yes, I take on board the perspective that, you need some face-to-face contact. And if that can be worked out in certain places, then that's great. But we do work that is easily able to be done virtually. Yes, we will need to manage our place and our leadership in hybrid teams virtually. That will be a challenge, I think, that would need to be overcome. But when I think about it as a marketer, like 30 years ago, for example, I was working with essentially a virtual team, right? My sales team was distributed around Australia, New Zealand, Asia. My advertising agency was in Sydney. I was based in Adelaide. The supplier was in the UK. Now, we didn't have the enabling technologies of the internet. We did it by phone, by fax, by courier. So to me, there's absolutely no reason with this technology that we can't figure out how to work remotely. It's a no-brainer for me. I don't know how others feel, but it's a no-brainer for me.
Sounds like a provocation to me that, that whilst there's no substitute for physical interaction and building trust, you do need to have some face-to-face interaction. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. The world has been a geographically diverse place. The world may have gotten smaller because of air travel and the ability to move between countries. We learned about that during our master's studies, but we also articulate that the world is the smallest it's ever been because of digital technologies. So our ability to be connected to each other on a more regular basis is enabled by digital technologies and these kind of mechanisms like the video conferencing that we're using today. So couldn't agree with you more. And I actually also agree with Lisa's comment about physical, no substitute for physical, especially in a sales environment. I think if it's a customer and a trusted advisor as well. And so I might ask for a comment at this point to our industry panel as well to jump in. Anyone who wants to provide any comments on the definition of Web3, metaverse, and that future of work and how we enable it. Feel free. You've got 30 seconds to 1 minute to make a provocation or an answer. Anyone up for it? Is it going to be?
To qualify on top of what Diane said, there's definitely for and against for both. As Diane's pointed out, and as you pointed out, sales is a real relationship thing. So being able to have that tactile, be in front, blah, blah, blah. But I absolutely agree that all other things that tech has enabled us in ways that we've never been able to before. I always say there's good and bad in everything. One of the disenabling things is the fact that I tend to work 16, 18 hours a day. Do you know what I mean? Everything's pinging, you're looking, and they've got, because I work in medicine, so there's this huge thing about the prevalence of ADHD. I think it's easy to put a title on things, and I actually don't like that. I think it's up to us to be responsible and focus. So, this is the good and bad with the tech. So we've got these issues that tech presents us, but then there's issues of face-to-face. You've got to drive place, you've got to concentrate, your phone's pinging. So yeah, I just wanted to say that there's definitely positives for both, no doubt about it.
Lisa, very wise and balanced point of view for both sides of the spectrum around how we enable ourselves to be productive, but we don't disempower ourselves from intentionally leading our lives. It can be very addictive. There's the endless scroll. And that's actually the perfect segue to get into, marketing, which is smart predictive technologies like AI are going to provide us with the most personalized, customized experience we've ever had. It used to be, hey, I can't believe that Bunnings is trying to sell me a mower, when I was just mentioning that to my wife the other day. Mind you, I had my Facebook account open whilst doing that. So we've gone through the trust, the distrust, and then maybe the normalization of the fact that our data and we're, this sort of listening environment that we're in. We are going to move to a future where more trust needs to be built. We'll get to ethics in a minute, but around the actual smart predictive intelligence on the technologies, what are we seeing around influencer marketing, around micro stories, videos, AI models of what Micah White might want in a petrol mower, for example, because I think we are going to be in that future where it's more personalized. I think you talked about immersive experiences, Diane, and the 5G is the enabler of the Web3 world, and we have that label of metaverse hanging around, and it could be redefined in future. But just to kind of move forward, in the metaverse that we don't know, what will marketing look like? Is it the same as the world we know it today?
I can add to that maybe it's good to have a bit of simple definition of what metaverse is according to the dictionary. Right. So what they said is that a virtual reality space in which users can interact with a computer-generated environment and other users. So the point here is that it's virtual, but at the same time, it's real. So it's not only with computer-based things, and people within that reality space can interact with each other as well. So that's what makes it different. So there is a couple of good examples that they are using. So one of them is, if you have a look at HoloLens from Microsoft, they are bringing all of those training and everything within the virtual area that you just put a goggle, but you can see from what you were seeing before only in movies, that they were working in holograms. So it's basically a holographic device. Another thing that we see all of these, metaverse thing is normally within gaming, social media, socialization spaces, and marketplaces. One of the things is online games. Of course, we know it, but how different they are is, an example of it is Roblox. It's online game. So the difference is that people create the games themselves, and other users are playing by other users, so within that game, that are created by other users. So it's not only a gaming industry creating all of those platforms and only people are consuming. Now people are themselves creators. So just adding one more thing, the cool thing about it, which is important for marketers as well, is that we see that within this, let's say Roblox, 67% of users are under 16, which is amazing that how they are creating all of those games themselves. And then, it's most of the time it happens on the mobile devices and so on and so forth. So that's one of the things, and that's where already brands are starting to bring in their, let's say, all of their brands within that gaming, because they see all of those potential, especially for the younger generation.
Sam, I really would like, sorry, Mike,
Please,
I really would like to actually add something to this, because I'm actually living in the metaverse. So somebody who is actually living in the metaverse is living with me, I would say that way. My 10-year-old son, he's having school breaks now, and he's actually in the world of Pokemon and Roblox. And that is real for him. And whenever I actually go out for walk, I ask him to actually come with me, and he carries his iPad with him. Why? Because some Pokemon will be there, somewhere, and you want to catch that Pokemon. And so they are actually living in a kind of a metaverse in many ways, and that is reality for them. So it is here, and we are living that world. Sorry that I interrupted.
So it's both happening in the future in an undefined state, and it's happening in the current world we live in a relatively safe and defined way. That's interesting. And we just talked about, creators. I wonder 20 or 30 years ago, how many 16-year-olds, what the population of best-selling authors would be, at the local bookstore would have been below 16 years of age. And even as we moved into podcasts and voice audio, which is still quite a trend in terms of media and authentic storytelling, I wonder how many global sensations on audio are below the age of 16 or 12. Although when you move into YouTube, you then move into that video creator universe where it became more democratized, decentralized. Anybody can have access to it with a good 5G connection. And I think, Sam, what your vision is talking about is we already live today in 2022 with 67% of those users on Roblox are below 16 years of age. I wouldn't like to know how many over 40-year-olds are even present and active on there. And that scares me as a father of 4 people. Trying to be relevant to them is my goal, not necessarily being able to teach them these technologies, but just being relevant enough to have a conversation. So Sumesh, hats off to you for allowing your 10-year-old to carry the iPad. And it is that flick from virtual to a little more reality in the virtual. And even if we get down to the sort of the influencer marketing model, like some of these models we've been around for years, we always like to have someone else telling the story, which is more authentic, which we can build trust and belief on. Any influencer trends that we can talk about before we then move into some of the ethical considerations of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, and just to pick up your point about children, I was reading a study the other day that Lego did. I couldn't believe it. 8 to 12-year-olds in the US and the UK were 3 times more likely to want to be a YouTube star than an astronaut. Like, that's incredible. That's incredible. But yes, influencer marketing, I think that's going to be one of the biggest trends. I mean, obviously, customer journey mapping, user experience is still going to be there, but influencer marketing is going to be a big thing in the future. This year, I was reading some stats, $16.4 billion industry already, contributing almost $1 trillion of sales generated from that space. It's absolutely massive. And influencer marketing benchmark report that some 90% of marketers are believing that it is going to be effective. And that's not just in the consumer space, but also in business to business and in not-for-profit spaces as well. And as you were alluding to before, you know, content creation was the purvey of the film studios years ago. They were the only ones that had the ability to afford to do it. Now, democratization, as you're saying, allows anyone to do it. But there's going to be issues with it.
Absolutely.
You know, there's going to be some massive issues. I mean, they're already running up against issues with, you know, fake reviews that are misleading people, fake influencers who actually don't have followers, mismatches between brands and the actual influencers. And then you go back to your virtual metaverse. I mean, there are, you know, virtual influencers out there. And so what's the ethics around all of that?
Absolutely. Great sort of segue into this debate around ethics and legal considerations. And, you know, we saw with cryptography being used in currency and being used in creating a coin of value or a transfer of value, we sort of saw all this speculation recently and people all of a sudden asking, you know, how is that going to be regulated and how are we going to know what's going on when something is by its nature anonymous and by its nature hidden from even the owner? So, you know, I'd like to ask Tarek what his thoughts are around these ethical considerations, because these technologies are being enabled quite rapidly, but it doesn't appear they're well defined. And so when we have open access to, for example, the vast majority of Roblox subscribers are 16-year-olds, we also then have, you know, underage non-adults accessing technologies, you know, at a rate faster than maybe their parents can keep up with. And if good people are accessing these technologies and using them for good, the potential is there that that the not so good people are using them for not so good purview. So, Tarek, what are your thoughts on these matters?
Yeah. So there are actually two issues, in my opinion, definitely in line with your question, the ethical issue and the legal issue. So before I shed light on the latest trend, which is metaverse, I would like to actually jog your memory what happened back in 2016 when the President Donald Trump came to power. When he actually came to power, after a while, we came to know he actually used one company from the UK by the name Oxford Analytica to extract data from a variety of, you know, like the social media platforms, mainly from, you know, like the Facebook. That actually raised a question about ethics, because Facebook didn't do anything, you know, like illegally. As I believe most of we have a Facebook account, and if you have time, you may actually revisit the, you know, like the policies and procedures. We have actually given them our consent that they can use our data.
Yes.
And Facebook actually allowed Oxford Analytica to use the data of US citizens to come with some themes that they were actually preferring, you know, like the US voters. And Donald Trump actually used those themes in his, you know, like the election campaign, and readily he actually gained the popularity among the majority of the, you know, like US, you know, like the voters. The question is, was it ethical or not? Okay. Then recently, what happened in Australia from a legal perspective? Many of you know, if you're in Australia, a few weeks ago there was a huge data breach, Optus data breach, and now there is a discussion going on. Even day before yesterday, there was a news on ABC a group of people, they are actually going for a class action. Okay. Again, the question is, did they do anything, like illegally or
or unethical?
Unethical or illegal? There is a question. So now if we come to the point metaverse. So as per my understanding, when we start talking about the technology, when we start, spending our time, spending our, the money to develop a technology, we always focus on the benefits of that technology. Are we focusing on the ethical and legal consequences, especially with the metaverse? As Sam rightly pointed out, the fundamental of metaverse technologically is virtual reality. It has some additional, attributes, additional functions. And as per my understanding, this metaverse domain is still unexplored to a great extent. The question is, have we started thinking about the ethical consequences that may go wrong, the legal consequences that may go wrong?
Absolutely. And I think the provocation here is not enough. Even if we have started thinking of it, probably not deeply enough, probably not fast enough, and not with enough knowledge about the future. I was recently in Washington, D.C., allowing myself the opportunity to meet with the CTO of the Department of Homeland Security over there. And this is an organization with 250,000 policing and special agents. And he was sitting there very candidly telling a very large room that they don't have all the answers and that the enemy is always ahead. And we were exploring that with him in his keynote around the fact that the help desks that some of these cyber breach technology providers have is so good that when, we've had a couple of major cyber breaches in Australia where some of the firewalls were very easily broken and machines were turned off and $70 million was asked for. And when the response came back over the call center, hey, we don't have that kind of Bitcoin, the enemy was able to say, that's okay. We can take cash, we can take cars, we can take assets, we can create an account for you in the Cayman Islands tomorrow. The enabling part of the technology that you just mentioned is also available to people who don't have just and positive societal objectives. So Tariq, you've just brought up a really interesting thought bubble there, and I'd like to even ask our panelists, our industry members as well, around whether we think the ethical and legal frameworks are a break and a slowdown, or are they an acceleration for this? If we can get this right, Web3 and the future trends we're going to see in entrepreneurship and marketing in the next 10 years are going to solve problems we have today. So it's a good thing, right? Is it a break or an accelerator? What do we think?
I wanted to add something on the ethicality. Even before going to the metaverse, which Tarek said very rightfully so, we are very much behind in its progression. You can see Facebook trying to invest so much in the metaverse, and it hasn't really been popular at all whatsoever. If we go back to the influencer marketing, which has been now available for years and years and will continue to evolve, just to your point of are we ahead or are we behind? We're extremely behind. Just looking at the core influencers, at a big part of them being family vloggers, children having the channels and making millions of dollars. So can a child consent? Is this child consenting to be part of the family vloggers and have all of their life basically commercialized? And a lot of abuse has even been made public from a lot of these family vloggers, and there is still no legality around managing this. So I think we're very much behind into what implications and evolution of the metaverse in the future could have.
Great comment.
If I may actually add here a little
please,
bit.
Tariq.
Meka, I 100% agree with Boram. Even apart from the legality, again, if I go back to the ethics, what Diane was also saying, the reviews, there is a great concern of fake reviews. Even there are companies, third parties, you can actually pay them and they will actually, come up with fake reviews for your product or for your service. So as a marketer, as the owner of an organization, to what extent actually you are being ethical?
And to your point, Tariq, if you did engage in such activities, even if it's not illegal, is there a moral consequence to that? Is it good for society to start eating at a restaurant where all of the reviews were fake? Or in Lisa's business, which is medicine, I think we could probably already assume it's not moral or ethical to have a distrusting review of a medical prosthesis or a medicine only for the view of growth and sales. I guess we could keep going on this, and thank you very much for the interaction, Bora. I really appreciated that. We're sort of coming around to Q4. We're coming around to some really interesting provocations here, and while we could continue to talk about the enablement of the future, and then wow, there's some really serious considerations around there. We've got to think about the planet as well. We've got to think about the sustainability of our future as well, that in 10 years, we don't find ourselves in a position that's worse than today in relating to climate and sustainability. So we've got some panelists that specialize in some of these areas of research, and I've certainly really been fortunate to have a board role with World Humanitarian Forum for the last 2 years around technology for good, and how to bring some of those technologies around identity and achieving SDGs and public rights for for everyone in the world. It's a little known stat that only 1.5 billion people have a form of identity, and there's 7 billion people on the planet. And having that identity is so important for healthcare, and reforms need to be allocated to those areas. But around sustainability, and Sumesh, I'll pose this question for you. What are the trends we need to watch out for? Because I know of companies like Denominator that have come out around diversity, equity, and inclusion, around transparently reporting what kind of diversity is occurring in an organization, in order for us to then invest in them, or capital funding models. When they list, we need to see what is this company stand for, and that's just around the DEI aspects. But there's sustainability, there's climate action. What say you, Sumesh, around the sustainability factor?
Thanks, Mike. Actually, it's a very huge area. In fact, some of the things that you've mentioned just now are no more actually voluntary kind of action. It is increasingly becoming actually a requirement, mandatory for a reason, because as we know, we are actually trying to achieve this net zero emission standards in 2030 for many countries, and 2050 for majority of the countries around the world. We are left with no choices but to be green. So being green, or actually coming out with actually some kind of a green practice, is becoming actually something compulsory these days. Having said that, good thing is now the awareness levels are very high. Our consumers are actually aware of actually the consequences. They know that it is our need to get into that net zero level, and whose responsibility it is. It is my responsibility, my family's responsibility, rather than pointing fingers to the governments and companies. They do their part, but at the end of the day, if I don't do mine, nothing is actually possible. So therefore, if you look at actually some of the survey results, 90% of the millennials are actually looking for greener products. They want to actually buy greener products, even if they want to pay a higher price. And even for the previous generation, like Generation X, or even actually the baby boomers, more than actually 50% are now willing to spend that extra dollar for a product which is actually safe to the environment. And that is reflected in the market as well. Look around us, a lot of actually companies are nowadays coming out with products which are safer in some way. We can't have 100% actually green product, but you can see this trend getting stronger and stronger every passing day. One good example is actually the green packaging. Many companies, many actually products, if you observe these days, they actually claim that it has actually zero waste packaging, or biodegradable packaging, or actually paper packaging, you name it. Actually, they are coming out with this kind of innovative ways of helping the environment. And in fact, that gels very well with the expectations of the consumer. And interestingly enough, some companies even go in for demarketing. Like one good example is actually Patagonia. Recently, on a Black Friday, they advertised one of their jackets. And you know what was actually the title? Don't buy this jacket. They're not actually just telling them to buy. Don't buy it, because for making this jacket, we spent actually this much of water, this many hours of actually labor, and this and that. But they were saying that, well, if you so happen to buy this jacket, this may be durable, and this may actually serve you probably a few years, etc. What they were actually trying to say is they're giving actually consumers, as you've rightly pointed out, very transparent information about the product, the processes, the consequences, etc.
Yeah.
So people are being actually more candid in terms of actually what they do for the environment, the energy use of these companies, whether they're actually using this kind of renewable energy, etc., etc. And we are also actually changing because of that, those influences and those kind of supports coming from all quarters. So a lot of trends. If I start talking about those new trends, the time is actually not enough. But just one more important trend that I can actually, highlight here is that of actually eco micro influencers. We talked about actually influencer marketing. This is actually happening in a big way. Many companies are actually using the eco micro influencers using social media platforms to change the way we think about the environment.
Well, just like there's change for good, and there's also imposters that would use things for inferior motives, and we hope that ethics and regulatory frameworks can help protect us from those individuals. It isn't a straight line or a spectrum. I do believe it's a cycle. So the more oxygen we put into people accessing those technologies for good, they will be micro influencers in ecological circumstances. Really passionate debate there, and I want to allow our panelists members, our industry representatives, to comment on this. And there's been a fiery debate going on about bots and distrust and antitrust in there. So we've lit the fuse when it comes to our passion about some of these trends, and that's exactly the sweet spot we want to be in. Do we have any takers on sustainability, growth, green, climate action, the world? Sumesh provokes that it's mandatory. It's no longer a voluntary concern. And I'm sure we have people on various spectrums of the political and knowledge debate here. Anyone putting up their hand to have a comment here on sustainability and green initiatives?
It's a hard one. I want to do the right thing, but my mortgage has gone up $600 a week. And I have investment properties that are on fixed, and in 12 months, I actually won't be able to afford to pay for them. So you've got to look at where you cut back. So no going out, that's for a start, but then that has impact on the economy. All these small businesses, how they're going to survive. So it's for me, it's really, I definitely want to do the right thing. Like I use all organic and everything everywhere that I can, because I work in health and medicine. And I know the impact that these things have on your body. And we all like to think that we're invincible, but you get to your 40s, 50s, 60s, it's like a car. You've got to look after it, but sooner or later, it's not going to be as good as it used to be. It's like your digestive system. Sorry, I bring everything back to medicine. But it's just the way the world is. So, when I buy my airplane tickets, I pay the extra, to give them that extra bit of money they say to stop that. But so, I'll do it where I can. If money wasn't a problem, I would do it all the time. But it's really debatable as from where I see it.
And that's a really human comment. The humanity is a great way to start to close off this debate before we do our provocations, because if it's not the multinationals and it's not the government that's going to save us, and it's not the Steve Jobs-esque Bill Gates, Elon Musk that are going to save the world. If it's up to us, if it's up to me to change the world, is it going to be from, buying pasture-raised products or buying, lab-grown products which are sustainable as opposed to naturally unsustainable products? Or is it going to be, removing the demand in those really wasteful industries? Great question. And there's a human side to it, and that's the economy. That's the economic considerations. And, so we see time and time again, no matter what political spectrum you're on, our leaders don't always get this right. But they don't get it completely wrong. And I think that might be a comment and a provocation for me to leave you with, which is that, 20 years ago or 10 years ago, it wasn't really societally acceptable to have a green debate. No one really wanted to hear about it. We just would rather bury it. And even if you agreed on the sustainability side, you didn't have the knowledge to create a strong argument. I would almost say now it's gone to the other end of the spectrum, and around some of our thought leadership topics, we didn't even talk about woken up or woke arenas, but people have woken up to the idea that we must change our behaviors, but we don't always know how. And through debate and through dialogue and through this really respectful engagement, that's how it's going to happen. Can you imagine if half of the world was on Zoom right now talking about this? We probably have a lot of solutions. We probably have a lot of entrepreneurship and marketing solutions by the end of the day. And those kind of calls and those kind of provocations are what I'm up for in 10, 20 years, that my children are growing up in the right, the right way, doing the right things, as you say, Lisa, making the right choices. I have a big role to play in that, but I'm not the only one. And we are all in it together.